I am Laurel Brennan, and we are inside the Facebook group Brain Wellness and Dementia Prevention, and I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Teepa Snow today, a fellow occupational therapist. Hi, Teepa.
Hey, how are y'all doing? Yeah.
It is awesome to have you here, and if you don't already know Teepa Snow, I am glad that you are meeting her today because she is someone, if you have any connection to anyone who has having brain changes, dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline, in any way, Teepa is someone that you want to know about. So I'm just going to read a little bit of background about Teepa, and then we will jump into the questions. So Teepa Snow is one of the world's leading advocates and educators for anyone living with dementia or other forms of brain change. Teepa is an occupational therapist with over 40 years of rich and varied clinical and academic experience. Her philosophy is reflective of her education, work experience, medical research, and firsthand caregiving experiences. Her advocacy efforts led her to the development of the GEMS state model for understanding the progression of dementia and changes in abilities. She also created the positive approach to care training strategies, which are effective techniques for anyone seeking to optimize care and support for those living with brain changes. As the education director of Eastern North Carolina's Alzheimer's Association, she also helped to create the nation's award-winning DVD entitled Accepting the Challenge, providing the best care for people with dementia. Her user-friendly approaches provide guidance and leadership to national efforts to promote best practices in care. Teepa's company, Positive Approach to Care, was founded in 2006 and is now collaborating to improve dementia care in over 30 countries worldwide. PAC, or Positive Approach to Care, provides online and in-person services, training, and products to professionals, family members, the lay public, and people living with brain changes. You can find her at teepasnow.com for educational video clips, DVDs, books, information on individual certifications, online support groups, virtual and on-site trainings, or to subscribe to the free monthly newsletter. Now, I bumped into Teepa fortunately, by accident, as I was coming back into the workforce of occupational therapy after COVID, and they had new requirements to have dementia training. So I'd already had dementia training, but I'd never had dementia training with Teepa. And as I was taking this online training, it was something that had been recorded, I think, over a decade ago. And I literally stopped the recording, called to my dad, like, oh my gosh, I'm like getting the best training I've ever had. You have to come see this lady. You know, he watched a little bit with me, and I've been, following you ever since. I found you on LinkedIn, like, please, I need to know you. Her training is like nothing I've experienced before. I'm sure your occupational therapy background has a lot to do with how you interact with people and your training. So I'll just say that the best training I've ever had, and that was only virtual, and I hope to continue and maybe do a real life training. So what's your story, Teepa? How'd you get here?
Oh, what's my story? Yeah. Well, I actually had dementia in my family before I ever got into OT. I also had, I worked with younger kids that had autism when I was a teenager that were sent back from the state facilities where they were placed when they told their mother, the reason your son has autism is that you are a really bad mother and you don't know how to show love and affection. It was I look back now and it was called the DIBS era, when there was a real thought that mothers who were cold and unfeeling made children develop autism. And it's like, after about 5 years of having the kids in institutions, they realized, oh, this isn't working. And they also recognized, oh, they were wrong. So I think, for me, I think that was really a core piece of who I became and why I get into what I get into is people can think they're really right about a condition and what causes it and what you should do and how you should manage it. And what I have found is that I'm not sure that's the way to go about this. So, after my experience of working with kids, I actually got my nickname, which is Teepa, and it became my it was not my given name. My given name was Tina, 2 E's and an N. But it became Teepa when Michael, one of the kids with autism, couldn't say Tina. He also had a speech problem. He would go, Teepa, Teepa, Teepa. And all my friends and family picked it up. So I legally changed it. So it's truly a given name by a little boy with autism. And what it taught me is that how we act with people, how we engage, how we behave with people, how we encourage people, how we have expectations of people, how we set up the environment. This was before I was an OT, could make a difference for kids and how we saw those kids. And so parents who got their kids back were overwhelmed, but a college kid with special ed degree pulled together a bunch of teenagers and said, here, let's offer some respite. And we did. So I was going to go into special ed. It was either go to Duquesne or go to Duke. And I went to Duke. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go into the medical practice somehow and figure out how to help from that side. Because I still thought I was going to do developmental disabilities. And then I went through and I didn't really want to be a physician. I mean, I was having organic chemistry and stuff with them. I was going, I mean, yeah, they have a role, but I don't want to, this isn't my thing. You know, this is not my thing. And so after I finished that, it was like, what am I going to do? So I worked nights somewhere and volunteered at a day center for people with developmental disabilities, adults more, and some kids, and then older adults with dementia. And that was really interesting. Now, prior to that, my grandfather had we just thought he had bad emphysema, but he had vascular dementia. And my grandma had Alzheimer's, but we didn't. She was just senile. I mean, we didn't know much back then. And I supported both of them, not well at all. But in that experience, I got a chance to learn more things. We were probably not doing great, but we were starting to change some practices. And I went to OT school, and after that, it was geriatrics. And after that, it was lots of opportunities. So I found that people were doing things to people that triggered behaviors, and they were calling the person as the problem. And what was happening is we were doing things that were making it worse. And that's where I first came up with the idea of positive physical approach, that there are ways to approach someone who's living with dementia that make a difference in their responsiveness to us and how they see us and how they hear us and how they interact with us. And then I stopped seeing them as them and us, and I started seeing people as people, and what I choose to do makes a difference in the interactions. So, I mean, ultimately, I think it was by making mistakes and being around systems that I saw that weren't doing what made sense, and being in a Jewish retirement and nursing home in North Carolina where nobody knew about the Holocaust. And so they were trying to bathe people who had numbers on their wrists in showers. With it, and it was traumatizing. People were screaming and fighting, and it was like that was sort of one of the very first times. Now, back in that day, I mean, that was 40 years ago plus, because I was still in school at the time. We didn't even know that there was trauma-informed care for older adults who had dementia. I mean, we would never, but I knew that there was something really wrong with what was happening, and we needed to not do that. And it was actually having to have a conversation as a student with a son who was a surgeon to help him understand that getting his mom bathed like twice a week in a shower space that looked a lot like you would have seen the like the gas chambers look. It's just, like, so that kind of experience over time after time, it's like, this should be different. This could be different. This is different when we do different things. And then I worked in head trauma and stroke and a lot of other things. So I got in a VA, I got to learn a lot about this thing that we call neurodegeneration and neuroplasticity and neurodiversity. And so I'm really respectful.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people who have worked in dementia care, if they're empathetic and they pay attention, they learn, they figure out things that work and things that don't work. But you took it to the next level and like turned it into a model so you can teach other people. That's like a big deal.
Yeah.
Can you explain like the GEM state model and the positive
Yeah.
approach to care?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we know is that human beings, as a rule, like to see things and determine whether or not there's something they want and would like to approach and they find positive, or I don't want that. I don't like that. That doesn't look safe to me. And we make that judgment call based on our visual data that we're taking in and then sending through up to the prefrontal cortex to make a determination. But it also goes to a very core part of the brain called the amygdala and the reticular activating system. And so we look at something and we can sort of like, oh, wow, that's cool. And if we like something, we tend to want to approach it. Okay. So if I want to approach you, then my mission is to get you to see me as a positive thing. And so if your changes in your brain limit how much you can take in visually at a time, and I come up behind in your first interaction with me is hey, more than likely, yeah, exactly. There's a startle reaction that comes from your primitive brain that says avoid, avoid, don't engage. Instead, if I go, not, hey, it's Teepa. And I make this offer. What I found out is getting permission from someone to visually engage, to verbally engage, to physically engage is really critical for brains to come together and want to interact with one another. And those brains live inside human beings. So visual, verbal, touch cues, looking at, public space, personal space, intimate space, looking at how people are processing and using my approach and my initial engagement to determine what abilities are you showing me right now. So if I go, Laurel, hey, how are you? And you don't do anything that says keep coming, it means I shouldn't keep coming because your brain isn't taking in this data in a way that feels that my keep coming sounds safe to you. And I might go, oh, hey, Laurel.
Yes.
Yeah, now see when I'm like, oh, hey, Laurel, that's the reticular activating system. And so what I'm doing is going, oh, hey, Laurel, and we can use the name of Laurel, or we can go, Laurel, or we can go, oh, hey, Laurel. Now, all three of those cause different reactions in you. One is shame or fear or distress, one is excitement, and one is curiosity. Mm-hmm. And so when I do that, I can check your brain out and see what you're doing. So this GEMS-based model and positive approach model is based on this idea that what you're capable of doing, you will do with the right cueing. And so if I look at you in your space and you're not doing much of anything, then I've got to figure out what are you able to do right now and how might I check that out. So if I were to show you, ooh, hey, Laurel, and you were to reach out for something, then I would know when I modeled this for you, and I do it a little to the side so that you can see what I'm doing, which is real different than me doing this. Mm-hmm. Now those seem like, like little adjustments, but they matter because this space is shared space and this is a confrontational space. So when I started looking at, okay, so how do we help people figure this out? Is somebody's visual field about like this or like this or like this or like this, or are they only able to really use one image at a time and they use their second hand as a check it out for distance and texture and stuff? If that's the case, then what I'm seeing is different ability states. And if I see different ability states with vision, I can see the same thing with auditory processing, and I can see the same thing with sensory motor movement. And And so once you start recognizing attention and everything else, then you can start going, okay, so it's not just what people are losing, it's what they still have. And I can only work with what people have. I mean, I can't use what somebody doesn't have, but I can acknowledge it so that I give them the right support and the right care. And so if we have a way of talking about abilities in a more positive way, not he's a stage 1 or a stage 2 or a 3 or a 4, which is numbering, and people, numbers they have value assigned, versus sapphire and diamond and emerald and amber and ruby and pearl. All of them are beautiful, and all of them have characteristics and things that have, but they need different settings and different care. And so that's where I came up with the idea, we need a positive way of thinking about brain differences that doesn't mean something's worse than the other, just means it's different and it needs different support. So I'm curious, Laurel, do you think you might go into a pearl state every night?
Maybe. Give me some more.
Are you inside the shell of your body and not paying attention to the world outside?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you not visually aware of the world outside of you, right? In those moments when you're really...
Absolutely.
Do you think if someone suddenly touched you or shook you or do something, you might be really reflexive in your reaction to that?
Yes, 100%.
What if somebody tried to pull your legs apart to clean you?
Yeah, horrifying. Yeah.
What if they tried to put something in your mouth? Or, so that is when we're in a pearl state. We all go into a pearl state if we're healthy. Every 24 hours, we should be about 6 to 8 hours in a pearl state, because that sleep pattern is when we're healing and recovering. And if we think about people who are later in dementia and they're needing a lot of time inside to simply be able to be, then when I want them to come out toward where I am, I have to acknowledge, wow, their systems are going to be really ruled by reflexes. And they're going to take more time to alert and arouse, and they probably won't be able to stay out that long because they're getting to that place where pearl state is the best they can give us because there's been so much damage. And if that's the case, then how do I support them there? And it's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing that once I acknowledge it, I can really work with what's present and not grieve the thing that I can't have anymore because it's not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I shared earlier that when I tell people, that my mom died with dementia, I usually am met with the response of, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. And while I appreciate their compassion and empathy, I usually come back with, it wasn't horrible. And she continued to teach us and share her love until the last minute. And it was, a blessing in so many ways. And I think that you are opening people's minds to see the positive.
Yeah, I mean, I would never wish dementia on someone. I wouldn't wish it on myself or anyone else. But if it does happen, I think it's time for us to quit, immediately grieving the loss of this human being. This human being is still with us and they're still very present. And unfortunately, often, I think it's what we choose to do and how we frame it and how we want what we want. Like, I spend a lot of time if I were like going, Laurel, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? Yes, I did. I did too. I told you. I'm not going to tell you again. I want you to try to remember. And it's like, we would never do that with like, okay, I want your kidneys to work better. All right. I know you have kidney failure, but this is ridiculous. You've got to get your kidney. I mean, like, what an absurd concept. And yet without training, people want what they can't have and they don't even realize what they're doing, and helping them appreciate, listen, there's a different way of looking at this. She may not have this short-term memory thing, but if I say instead, oh, you're wanting to know what time we're leaving. You know what? We're leaving about 2. But Laurel, I have a question for you. Yeah. Could you help me for 5 minutes? I think I want to make up some peanut butter crackers to take with us.
Okay.
Come on. Because what we have is wait time. And what you need, you don't know how to fill your time anymore. And me like telling you that we're leaving at 2, we're leaving at 2. And well, we just keep focusing on the thing you're worried about, which is I don't want to be late. I want to be on time. I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do, but I know I'm supposed to do something. It blocks your ability to do something constructive. And so I would frame that as an emerald moment where you're trying to know what to do, but you don't know how to initiate the thing other than to ask me. And if I get stuck and I don't know how to initiate something else, we're both stuck. Right. So I just need to figure out, okay, if I give you what you asked for, which is it's going to be about 2, ooh, and then I do an interjection. Ooh is an interjection, not an interruption. I just thought of something. I could use your help. Give you value and purpose and say, I'm thinking we should make up some peanut butter crackers. Something that I know there are concrete steps to. I know you can still do it. It's, yes, it's going to use your motor skills, but I think you have those visual motor skills. And with some guidance, you know what? Let's get those crackers. Graham crackers or saltines? What do you think?
You get to make a choice. Graham crackers.
Graham crackers. Okay. Now let's look up here. I think the graham crackers, is it the blue box? Look and see.
Right.
These are all opportunities. And the problem is if all I'm doing is grieving, you can't remember what time the appointment is. I'm missing so many wonderful opportunities and I'm driving myself crazy with the inability that you have, and I'll try all kinds of ridiculous things. Here, let me write it on a piece of paper. Here, let me put it by the door. Here, let me put it on the whiteboard. Here, let me do, and it's like, to what end?
Right. I can't remember to look at the clock to see if it's
exactly.
what time it is right now anyway.
If you turn to me the first 5 times, guess who you're going to turn to the next 5?
Right. You're giving people the why behind the what, which I talk about a lot. And then you begin to understand and appreciate the person in front of you without being angry and frustrated.
So I get people to be curious rather than judgmental, because I think when we move toward curiosity, it allows us to see the other person's perspective and look at ours and go, oh, so this is how these could fit together so that we can actually do something that moves us forward rather than butt heads with each other. Because I just, I watch it a lot and it's like, that's just painful and it doesn't get us anywhere. Let's pause. Let's try something different.
Yeah. So you work with, I experienced your training through a professional space, but you work with professionals and lay people and how do people get you, find you? You're on YouTube and TikTok.
YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, whatever all the things are. We're on a lot of media. The main thing is usually it's word of mouth. What happens is somebody finds something, and it's not uncommon. People say, I binge watched you. And it's like, I'm not recommending that, but I hear, it's like, what I wish would happen is when somebody's getting a diagnosis or even being worked up, here, take a look at a couple of these videos and see if these are helpful to you. Because we wait way, way too long to start asking people to consider the possibility of brain change and what we can do to prepare ourselves for it and what we could do to help ourselves with it, whether I'm the one with brain change or somebody else is. Because I do a fair amount of work with people living with dementia themselves at advocating, doing their own, they co-speak with me, they present. They also, I'll have them come in and then bring their families if that could be helpful. Because we have a lot of folks who are still living independently early in their dementia. And yet they're recognizing, I want my family and my professionals that are working with me to have a better handle on what to do. And I want to be somewhat in control of it. So we have a variety of ways. We have free things that we do. We do one Wednesday a month. In the evening, we do Ask Teepa Anything or dementia problem solving with people all over the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. When I was working more regularly in dementia care and assisted living, I often would get referrals if people were having trouble with ADLs, their activities of daily living. Oh, we can't change their depends. We can't get them in the shower. We can't get them to change their clothes. Help.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of, quote unquote mistakes from caregivers.
Problems. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what are the most common mistakes that you see, and what
Uh,
situations come up most often?
yeah. I mean, quite honestly, the biggest mistake is not recognizing you didn't have permission. And unless someone has committed a crime, I believe every human has a right to either give me permission or tell me no. And my goal in my process is, how can I get a permission that allows us to move something forward? And so whether it's taking a shower or changing a clothing or taking a layer off or adding a layer on or brushing teeth or not eating a Kleenex or not going in people's rooms that aren't their rooms, not taking things that aren't yours, driving when people don't want you to drive, leaving your home when you think you should be able to leave your home and other people think you shouldn't, and call it elopement. When people say, one of the most common for families is, I want to go home, but she is home. She wants to talk to somebody who's been dead for 5 years. And it's like, yeah, there's lots of these things that are going on. And what often happens, we don't get asked to help until the pattern of negativity between two people have already been well established. And that makes getting permission harder, much harder. And so I'm not surprised that you experienced the journey with your mom differently, because I suspect you were pretty tuned in to the need for getting permission.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your mom's journey was a very different journey than it would have been if you were demanding that she allow things, or pushing her to the wall and saying we have to. And then, it's like, what gives anyone the right, simply because someone's brain is different, to say, I'm right, you're wrong, do it my way? And it's like, that's where the training I do is often, let's switch places and you tell me how you're feeling about what I'm doing, is usually a helpful thing. And people, well, I never even saw what you were going to do. And it's like, okay, well, let me try it a different way. And they're like, oh, well, that was different. Okay, so now you do it with me and let's see what happens. And they go back to the original way. And I say, okay, let's try it again, until we can rehearse until a new synapse starts to fire. Because I think we don't appreciate, when one person's brain is changing, we all need synaptic changes if this is going to work well. And it's effortful. And it's easier to want the other person to not do what they're doing than it is to get myself to do what I could to make it different. And that's where I think, time out, we need a different approach to this. And it's us. We got to make choices about us.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching one of your videos today about cognitive changes in language, that are language that's impacted. And you use the right hand and the left hand to help people remember that the left hand and the left side of the brain, that you lose these abilities, and the right side you retain. And then you went on to explain, what is involved in the right. And you wanted people to pick their hands up and tap themselves on the head so that they got synaptic changes as well. And they could really grasp this information. And then they were in partners and they were experiencing what it's like to have visual changes when you can only see right here. Yeah. And if somebody comes at you to try to wipe the oatmeal off of your shirt, and all you don't see them coming, but all of a sudden you feel, yeah, that's horrifying, right? Open your mouth.
That's where Zoom screens come in really handy these days, because I can bring it up. I am actually right at the screen, and you can't see it unless I raise it up and shove it in your eyes. Yeah. Because that's what happens with this, not able to do that kind of adjustment with my eyes, because I'm busy watching your face, because that's where data is coming from. And what you're doing is, and when they even say, which means I didn't get what you said. And then we go, which when you lean in, like, that's a helpful thing versus, I'm going to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Just making ourselves like, okay, let's look from the other person's perspective and see if we can figure this out with better outcomes for both of us.
Yeah. So I have a question. So I worked in dementia care in Scotland for the National Health Service for a year. So I had that amazing experience where I was not governed by productivity and time, and I could spend as much time as required with the patient. And here, you know, there's shower days, and people must shower on Tuesday and Friday, and they have this time frame, and I can only be with somebody for a certain time period. And how
The
do we?
system is so broken for people living with dementia. It's a disaster for families, for people living with dementia, whether you're in home or in facility, or the current system has not ever been designed for dementia. And for the longest time, I mean, I've been in practice so long that back in the beginning, we weren't allowed to do rehab with people who had a diagnosis of 290 in any other form, you know, the DMS coding. So we had to come up with something else. There was a reason why we were seeing them. And then it got to be, well, we could do it, but it had to be, what we were doing had to be very short term. And it's like, but we're the ones that have the expertise to help people start to build a daily routine that's going to work for everybody. You know, and as long as our system is so frigging broken, sorry, but it is just broken for people living with dementia, we are not serving anyone well. The current system is broken. I am sorry.
You have any advice? What do we do about that? Oh,
I mean, for me, it means, you know, my work has to be work that I do the way I do, which means I don't seek Medicare reimbursement for what I do, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to do what I do with people who need it the way I do it. I mean, I can't set up a shower day that for sure is going to happen when somebody doesn't know whether today is this morning, this afternoon, yesterday, today. I just took a shower. Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you hadn't had one. Wow. I am so sorry. Let me see what we can figure out, because I was sure thinking that's what we were going to do next. Tell you what, let's go get something to eat, and then we'll figure out what else we're going to do next. Because me continuing to push that shower in that moment, because it's on my schedule, on their schedule, and, you know, I have to get it done, you know, it's like, we're precipitating, you know, we are participating in this thing. So I think the reality is we've got to keep raising our voices to say, this doesn't serve people living with dementia and their families or their carers well.
yeah.
We gotta get out of this mode of the numbers are going to make us get out of this mode.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what you show by example is when you're reenacting an imaginary situation. You're a great actress, by the way. And everyone did you do acting in your former life?
I always piddled around. Mostly I was backstage doing scenery and makeup and costumes and all that stuff. But I was around. They would call me in for the bit parts, you know.
Yeah, it's like at the flip of a switch, you can become a different character, and it's really fun to watch. And it helps with the novelty of the training. Like, it helps things sink in. But what comes up when you are playing the role of the caregiver, is that you're always allowing for this person to be right. This person in front of you is right.
They are. Yeah, they are. I truly believe where they are, they are. And it's like, you know, I've got it wrong, and I am sorry I have it wrong. I'm doing the best I can, but boy, did I mess that up. And so, you know, I really thought that you would recall that we had a shower scheduled for this morning. Evidently you don't. So, I mean, me saying, yes, we did, is just starting an argument. And I know that the right side of the brain, because it can social chit chat, can also argue. And I don't really want to start an argument. I'd rather chit chat, and then I'd rather figure out something else we can do to get us to that place where, well, you know what? You've got something on your neck right here. Tell you what, how about we at least get a washcloth and do a little washing up, you know, because even if you did a shower, something's here, and let's see what we can do. Let's freshen up just a little bit, because I thought we could go out on the patio. Because I got to be willing to let go of what I think you need and be flexible enough to recognize in this moment, you don't want to get naked in front of me and get in a shower stall. And it's like, I hear you. For whatever reason, whether you already took one or you don't want me there. But I can maybe get you to be okay with me assisting you with something else. And the goal is to help you not smell with body odor, not fulfill some checklist of a shower, frankly.
Yeah. And with my mom, 9 times out of 10, I would say, it's spa day. She's like, oh, that sounds exciting. You know, we would put the heater on to make the room really comfortable. And, you know, you give her a washcloth so that she's in charge.
You got it.
And when she tries to use the washcloth that she just used on her bottom back on her face, I'm like, oh, let me get you a fresh one. That one's dirty, you know. So just paying attention, but letting her do as much as she can on her own. Usually at the end, she would say, oh, you were so wonderful. Can I pay you? And I was like, you can give me a hug. You know, she didn't remember that I was her daughter, but she was grateful for the positive experience.
Exactly. And it's you're being willing to let go of being her daughter, to be the lady she liked to be with and her friend. We have to be willing to accept that new role, or it's not a good space for us. I mean, and there are family members who need to spend this much time with the person they love, because when they spend this much time, all they see is the person's dementia, and they hate their dementia, and it starts to look like they hate the person.
Yeah.
And what they need is less time in the care role. And the same is true with carers. When you don't find something you like about this human being you're trying to support, it's time to say, time out, I need a break. I need something different. Because we're both in this world of brain change, and we both got to acknowledge, because one of us is, doing the best they can, and the other one of us has to recognize it may not be a right time and a right place and a right situation for me, not because I'm incompetent, but because in this situation I'm not a good match.
Yeah. And it was, my dad actually asked me after he realized he couldn't be the full-time caregiver when he passed out headfirst on the table in a restaurant. It was like, I was only out for a second. My aunt was like, no, he was out for like 4 minutes, and this is the problem. We realized
exhausted.
The rest was getting to him. Yeah. So he asked, could you be, the caregiver? And I thought, I'm not sure if I can be a caregiver for my mom. I had to think about it for a little bit. And then after I came up with a plan, which was, at the time I had a 3-year-old. My mom loves children. She used to be a first grade teacher. I'm like, Mom, my son needs to learn his alphabet. Can you help me? And so that was the theme of our week. We had an A week. We went to pick apples, And then she had this meaningful
job. She had a job. She had purpose. She had value. As I said, I think the reason your mom's journey was the way it was because you were the way you were. And you were able to, without thinking that, you thought about it, I'm not saying that, but your OT background, again, you think about the environment, you think about props, you think about time use, you think about the value of rest and restoration, you think about the importance of engagement. And how, and you think about all those things without thinking about them. And you realize the importance of giving people a sense of pleasure and purpose and taking care of using what they have so they can keep using what they have as long as they have what they have. You do a lot of that. I can hear it from what you've just described without recognizing it for what it was. So you were using all those details. And so what I do is give people structure to allow them to be more effective when they don't have that background, that expertise, that way of looking at things. And some people are not skillful, and that's not their job. They shouldn't take that job on. They should go do something else. And they can be helpful in other ways. Caring in the intimate space or for personal stuff may not be their thing for somebody living with dementia. It's not for everybody, quite honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to analyze what works and put it in a program so that it's teachable over and over and over and over to more and more and more people, because more and more and more people need this information. Not everybody can go to OT school.
No, no. I mean, one of the pluses is I was just in Winnipeg and I was just in Minnesota, and in both communities, I mean, I was working with both, high-tech professionals, but also family members and people who had found me online, and they would come and say, it made all the difference in the world when I started recognizing what my role in this could be and what I was doing without meaning to. And so once I understood some things, then I could start shifting how I was doing what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I think, what we know is that there is a way to do it differently. The question is, how do we get that word out to everybody so that they're not halfway through a journey and they're frustrated and they're at their wit's end, quote unquote, and doing things midnight on YouTube. How do we get this to be something that people has more access to earlier on? And the same is with getting a diagnosis even. I mean, that whole thing is often traumatic for people.
Right. So you've shared that, ways that we can have like a mindset shift and see people for their strengths, which I think makes a big difference on how we look at dementia in general. One thing that you shared as kind of a top thing is make sure you get permission. Get permission before you touch or jump in there. Are there other like big things that you could gift to people today?
Yeah, I mean, I think, are you using multimodal cueing? Are you showing before you start talking a lot? Because we know that the verbal linguistic skills are vulnerable to brain changes. I mean, they are for us. When we become distressed, we can't find our words. We can't think straight. So if that's the case for us on a bad day, and I have brains that are having wiring problems, why would I think that talking a lot is going to be helpful? So visual cueing, using yourself and the environment as visual canvas. So if I go, ooh, Laurel, something to drink? I mean, it's a little thing, but getting into the habit of offering something visually before you give something verbally, and then offering, well, come on, let's go get it, rather than let me get it for you. The idea of engaging one another, engaging the person, because again, another very common issue is initiation. So my preparation, my initiation will get your participation. And then where possible, allowing folks to have choices. And those choices could be complex or they could be really simple. Oh, hey, Laurel, would you rather go this way or that way today?
Yeah.
And I don't care which way we go, because either one is going to take us somewhere. But what I want to do is get your prefrontal cortex to do what it can as far as make a choice, because that means you initiated that little bit.
Yeah.
So those for me are key things, and pausing and making sure your partner's with you.
Right. So we are in the Facebook group, Brain Wellness and Dementia Prevention. So we have learned a lot over the last decade or so that there's a lot of things that we can do to prevent cognitive decline, maybe to maintain it. There's some people even saying now, maybe there's things we can do to roll it back a little.
Yep.
Prevention and early intervention are ideal. And how do you think we can kind of blend what you're doing with that kind of frame of reference? I know you were on with Dr. Heather Sandison, who I had on a couple of weeks ago. I think we all have this mutual love. You don't know me that well, but I love you both from afar.
That works. We can all really like each other a lot, love each other, and enjoy one another, and build a community together if we're respectful of each other. That's, that to me is like super helpful to figure out how we can respect each other. So your question is, how does my stuff plug in? And it's like, whenever we do something that distresses someone, I can tell you for sure it's gonna produce cortisol and adrenaline in both of us. And we know that cortisol and adrenaline, when they're produced that way, is not good for a human brain. So whatever we can do that allows us to use other chemicals that are healthier chemicals, I don't see how we lose. I mean, if I'm encouraging you to hydrate and I go, ooh, cold water or lukewarm for you? I like mine room temperature. You?
And you're also asking questions and waiting.
I'm giving space. I'm holding the space for you because I need to respect. It could take you to take the visual and the data, process it, and go, I think I like cold. Ah, have you got some water right there? Right down there?
Talking to me?
Yeah. Now, room temperature or cold?
Room temperature.
Me too. Cheers.
Cheers.
Now, both of us just hydrated twice.
Right. That's helpful for the brain and the body. Right.
Yeah, so what's good for you is good for me. And that's where I think all too often when people are in care support of someone living with dementia, they think it's all about caring for that person. What I have to say is if you learn how to do this well, you actually care for both of yourselves, because that's our biggest mistake is if I don't know how and I keep putting cortisol out and adrenaline out and cortisol out and adrenaline out and I don't have any dopamines because I'm not feeling that way and I don't really like anything anymore. All I'm doing is setting myself up for my own brain failure. Mm-hmm. And we've got to break the chain somehow. Yeah. We've just got to break it.
Teepa, thank you so much for doing what you do. Can you share how people can find you and take a training or learn little bits and chunks as they can? All those things.
Yeah, well, we have a website. It's simple. It's just my name with no space, teepasnow.com. And if you go down on it, there's free videos on there right away. There's free resources. Again, the goal is not to generate income. The goal is to generate interest and to get curiosity going. We have a Facebook page, Teepa Snow. You know, we have a TikTok channel, which is hashtag Teepa Snow. We have a YouTube channel, Teepa Snow. We kept it simple as much as we could with the same name. And so it pops up pretty quick when you do that. And it allows us to, you know, start conversations. I mean, you can just, we have an info at teepasnow.com. We have an 800 number people can call. We have chat online on our website. We have free consults for a half hour. We really do we have every morning I do an 8 o'clock morning Eastern time thing on Facebook because our goal is to be supportive and helpful for folks wherever they are and whatever's going on.
Wow. And there's more out there than I even knew. So thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you want to share that I haven't gotten to yet?
I just want to say thanks to the folks who are part of the Facebook group, because I think moving in the direction of brain fitness, brain wellness, recognizing neurodiversity and its role in neuroplasticity is also neurodegeneration. I think once we start talking about this stuff, it's always healthier than just it's dementia. And it's like, okay, so what do you know about that? Because it's like, we say that word like it's the end. And it's like, yeah. So she has dementia, tell me more about it. Because until I hear more, I don't know anything, honestly. I don't even know if we're right. Or she has Alzheimer's. It's like, it's time to stop this stuff and do something different. And the way to stop something is to try something different, in my book.
Yeah. Thank you for your positive approaches.
You're welcome. Thanks for your curiosity and your interest and your willingness to learn. And thank you for the journey with your mom. I think your work is an example of what I hope and wish more folks would move toward, because it doesn't have to all be drama and trauma. There are hard and really difficult times for folks, for sure. but it's not all that. I mean, just like life isn't. I mean,
Right.
just the way it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. What are you going to do with it?
It is what it is. Yes. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.